There, that works. Okay. It's good to be with everybody this Friday. Hope you're all having a great day. And once again, I get to share my heart with you. It's such an honor, such a privilege, such a joy to be able to just open up and share what's going on inside me with the rest of the world and connect with other people. And so when I come here on Fridays, I'm here mainly to bear witness to what I see. I'm not here to bear witness to what others see. I'm not what you call a scholar's parrot. I'm not here to re read tons of scripture to you or anything like that at all. Matter of fact, you'll probably find that I speak very little about scripture or what others say what because I'm not here to indoctrinate anyone, and I'm not here to convince anybody that what I see is truth. When I speak here, I'm just sharing with you what I see during this time, during now, eh, to just speak the truth of being more than knowing. So I really don't find myself in a position to feel the need to defend anything I say or justify it or explain myself to anyone. And that gives me a lot of liberty, actually, to say things that the ego would not want me to say. Because the ego likes to contend. And I've learned that if I don't contend, nobody can contend against me. If I don't resist, I become irresistible. So when I come and I come here, I share my heart. There's a way of coming without having my defenses up, without having to stick up for what I think is truth or for what's right or wrong. I can allow everybody to have minds of their own. Yeah, dances. But we are. When we don't resist, we are. When we don't resist, we are irresistible. There's a charisma that comes from uh, meekness and submission and quiet, still sort of a heart and spirit. There really is. But I can let everybody have a mind of their own. A lot of times new people come in here, especially now that we've moved the room over to this area. We see a lot of new faces. And I'm finding that a lot of the new faces means a lot of new ideas, a lot of new ways of seeing things. And I don't have to say any of them are right or wrong, because when I look deeply, I can see that a few moments from now, a lot of times, even while I'm speaking, even while I'm sharing my heart, even in the middle of it, a lot of times, I'll begin to see things differently. I'll start to see things differently, even in the middle of my talking. A lot of times, something will appear to me. I'll see something that I just didn't see in that light before, in that way before, and that's good because that's the nature of the mind. It changes. It changes. The mind changes, and it's futile. It's futile to resist that change. It really is. It's futile to resist that change. The ego likes the mind to be stubborn. The ego likes the mind to 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 be a certain way, a predictable way, a concrete way, a, a religious way. Uh, but all that does is end up in frustration because we can't keep the mind from changing because it's the nature of the mind to change. It's a law of an impermanence that life itself is set in motion that the mind will change. So I've come to realize not to offer myself to a methodical sort of a mind because the mind and its methods are great servants but poor masters. And today I seek to live life beyond those methods, beyond that dot method methodical way of approaching my world. Now that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with having a method. Uh, Methods have their place. Certainly they do. If I want to get to the ocean from where I stand, I could say I need to take so many steps, a certain number of steps to get there. And after I take that certain many steps, I'll be in the ocean and I'll get wet. So if I want to get wet, I could use that method, that algorithm, that pattern, that though I could go that way to achieve that result. And methods help us to accomplish our goals. The technologies we have today in the medical fields and computer programming are all there because methods were invoked and carried out. I dare say many of us are alive today because of methods. I mean, as far as the methods have saved our life in the medical field, or methods have some way or another touched us all. In and of themselves, there's nothing right or wrong about methods. They just are. But methods become problematic when we make the assumption that everything can be obtained by them. Because what is eternal doesn't come about by a method. The methods come out of our minds. And because of that, they're impermanent. Methods come out of what is impermanent. Therefore, they're good for their time and they're good for their season. but yet they're conditional and they're dependent. What do I mean by that when I say that methods are conditional and dependent? Yeah, consider if I had a method, say, for picking up my phone with my hand, okay? For this time, for this place, that'll work. I've just done it. I've reached out my hand and I've grasped my phone and I've picked it up and I've brought my phone to my face, okay? So for now that method works, but it's conditional and dependent, okay? It is. It's conditional and it's dependent. It's good for now, but say if overnight I have some kind of accident and my hand gets cut off and my hand's no longer there, then that method would become invalid because it's conditional on the presence of the hand. And because everything is impermanent, because everything has its time to be and then it goes away, methods can hold no eternal weight because they're conditional and they're dependent on things that are impermanent. And when they really become a problem, when they really trip us up, is when we take those methods and make them into rules or ways for being. We make them into laws for being. When we say this is the right way to do it and there is no other way. This is the way to get to heaven and there's no other way. This is the way to know God and there's no other way. This is right and there's no other way, you know? Then those methods become stumbling blocks to our spiritual walk and to our life in general. Um, they become problems when we insist that they are the way to be. When we make them into eternal laws rather than letting them die in their time. Because they're supposed to. They're supposed to die. They're impermanent. They're not supposed to last forever. And we've got to see that. We really need to realize that methods are not supposed to last forever. But it turns into a real a trippy situation when we insist that people adhere to those methods. When we insist that people adhere to methods like that, then we find that we can't go out and heal a man on the Sabbath day. Or maybe we'll insist that a stranger out in the cold cannot wear a woman's tunic to be warm. And we let him freeze to death because we say that a woman's tunic is wrong for a man to wear, you know? And we say that our methods of dressing and our methods of working and our methods of being are absolute, and they're not. Methods hold no eternal significance. What do I mean by that is what I mean by methods do not hold any eternal significance is that they are not what matters the most. They are not what is essential. Because methods are impermanent, because they're not eternal, because they're subject to time, we find they're not the best way to connect us to the eternal. Because methods come out of the mind. And the mind just doesn't get it, doesn't recognize the eternal. If I want to know what's in a dog's mind, I need to have the mind of a dog. And without having the mind of a dog, the awareness of a dog, uh, I really can only guess what's in a dog's mind. And there's an awareness that's eternal. And it's with that awareness that is eternal that we can know what is eternal. It's that eternal mind, that eternal heart, that eternal spirit inside of us that bears witness to what is eternal. To let us, that lets us grasp it without grasping it. That allows us to be aware of it. And it's that eternal mind that we want to wake up. So that it can know itself as itself. That may make no sense to your mind at all, but it will bear witness to what's eternal inside you. Because there is that which is here, which is unconditional, which is here all the time. And that is what we can awaken to. That's what we can awaken to. So awakening is not about what we think it is. What we think awakening is will change because it comes out of our mind, and our minds will change, and the mind will construct many methods, and the mind will construct many programs with different steps to take in order to awaken. But we got to see that it's all coming out of the mind. All this construction work of putting methods together and programs and this many steps or this method to awakening, that all rises from the mind. Yet, yet the mind cannot awaken the eternal self to itself. The mind cannot awaken the eternal self to itself. The eternal self is only known by the eternal self. It's known in stillness. It's known in a quietness, in a silence. It's not known by methodical works or labor. It's not known by doing anything. It's not known by going anywhere. It's only known by being here, now, in the stillness, in the quiet, just as we are, just as we are. And what we are is love. We are love. That's what we are. And love is not a goal to be obtained. It's love is not so much a goal as a way of being. The way that it is. Love isn't something we can make it into out of things. Love is not something that we can construct. All we can really do is just get out of love's way. If we really want to know who we are, all we can really do is just get out of the way and let the love we are shine, you know. There is no way to love because love is the way. There's no method to love because love is the way. The way the way is the goal itself. The journey is the destination. The way is the goal itself. The journey is the destination. Now, when we consider what methods are means to an end. They're a way to get someplace, a way to accomplish something. They're a means to an end. But love is not a means to an end. There's no method. There's no way, methodical way to love, because love itself is the way. And loving is the way of being with what's here. Loving is the way of being with the truth. Real love is intimacy with the truth. True love is intimacy with the truth. It's a way of abiding with the truth, living with truth, without pushing, without pulling, without turning our head away and ignoring, without anything. Just simply being. Just simply being is being truth. When we simply are what we are true. So it is that being is the highest form of intimacy with truth. To be true, to simply be. To know being rather than to be knowing. To know being rather than to be knowing. To be aware. To be awareness. To be love. To be loving. When we are aware, when we are love, we are we are awareness and we are loving. There's nothing to get to. It's not a means to an end. Methods, though, methods that arise out of the mind are all about becoming something, gaining something, losing something. But what I'm talking about today is not about getting something or going someplace or becoming someone. This is all about being. And you cannot become what you already are. You cannot become what you already are. And because you cannot become what you already are, there's nothing to be gained. There is nothing to be gained. When we really realize that at a visceral level, at a heartfelt level, when the lights really come on and we really see that there's nothing to be gained, the struggle's pretty much over then, ain't it? The war's over. Life becomes light. Carrying water and chopping wood, as Larry likes to say a lot, becomes a joy instead of a labor. When there's nothing to be gained, we lack nothing. When there's nothing missing to be missed. When there's nothing to be gained, there's nothing more to know. There's nothing more to know. And when there's nothing more to know, we fall into the silence. Silence falls upon us as we realize that we lack nothing that we need to know. Life is faithful. And we are given what we need to know on the fly as we need to know it. The Israelites left Egypt and they went in the desert, and every day manna rained down from heaven. And every day they got their daily bread and they were told not to store it up. And some of them didn't listen and they stored it up, and it spoiled and it went bad and they got sick and died. But life is faithful to give us our daily bread, our daily manna. It, not only daily, but moment by moment, second by second. Everything we need to know is given to us. Right now, you know everything you need to know. But do you know that that is enough? When we really know, then what we know is that we know enough. Enough. Then comes the silence. Then we have nothing that we need to figure out. Then we don't have to manufacture another method. When we know that we know enough. And then we can take this deep breath and let out the sigh of relief, like, ah. And the same sigh turns into a sigh of surprise, like, ah, I got it. It's like an, ah, I got it. Ah. Two sides of that same sigh happening at the same time when we simply know that we know enough. And then we come into this depth of silence to where not even a wink or a nod is needed. Because there is a depth of silence where we simply recognize one another for who we are, as being one body of being, of all being part of one isness. And the best teachers, the best teaching brings us there. That's where it takes us. It brings us an awareness of that silence that's here right now. It lets us ease back into to being And it lets us all flow back into being one body. Good teaching turns us loose like that. It turns us loose to ease back into just being and to flow into that oneness, just like all the rivers flow into the ocean. Good teaching takes away the blocks that keep the flow from occurring. It removes the things that keep us from flowing together into one body of being. So some of the best teaching that we hear weakens the ambition, but yet it draws us into a resolve of heart, a resolve to simply abide and rest in that silence. And that's when we wake up. There's a silent awe that comes with an intense light. Not a blinding light, but yet intense, you know. And the thing with light is silent. Uh, What does the sun say? Everything. But yet it says nothing. It says nothing and reveals everything. The sun is silent. Light is silent. It says nothing, but it reveals everything. Light is light is not ambitious to disclose. The sun is not ambitious to disclose. It's resolved to shine. It never gets excited, yet it produces great awe. Light never gets excited, yet it produces great awe. It produces great wonder. When the lights come on, we're left speechless. And that awe draws us deeper into the silence. And it's in that silence that we come together. We come together to be this one body of holy awe and one body of holy awe and wonder. Simply a body of awe and wonder. Take a minute and kind of grasp that. To be one with this body of awe and wonder. Just simply to be one with a body of awe and wonder. Just to collectively just be just like that. And the way and back into that awareness, into that consciousness remains. It remains. It remains. It's here now. The moment that we become willing, not ambitious, but but willing in the form of resolution as a resolve to be still and listen. When the heart becomes resolved to sit still and listen and to stay in that posture of stillness and openness, then all of a sudden God's voice becomes very, very clear. There's much clarity. And then as God reveals himself in that stillness, in that silence, we're stricken with awe even at a deeper level. And it's a timeless sort of awareness, a timeless awe. It happens like a flash, like lightning, in the twinkling of an eye. It's just like all of a sudden we just see. We just see. We just see without seeing anything in particular. We just see. When our eyes are opened, we just see. And that's enough. It's not that we have to see anything in particular, but just to see is enough. And when we can just see, and that's enough, when we can be in that silence where our eyes and our ears open up, it's in that silence that we consummate our betrothal with truth. It's in that silence that we consummate our marriage with the truth. And what we find is that our fidelity to reality entails an abiding in that silence. Our fidelity to reality that comes from abiding in that silence manifests itself as equanimity. And with that equanimity comes great clarity. When we're still, we see. When the water is still, it's seen through very easily. It's transparent. When the water's troubled, it's hard to see through it. So as long as we give our attention in an undivided way, in a faithful way, in a way of fidelity to the truth, we remain at peace. But when a marriage partner takes their attention away from their spouse, and when their spouse no longer gets the attention they need, and that attention is given to other things, the marriage becomes doomed. And so it is if we take our attention off the truth and decide to manufacture our own. When we want to know mental certainty, over the truth that is right in front of us, what we do is we divorce ourselves. We divorce ourselves from reality. And when we divorce ourselves from reality, we enter into illusion. And what illusion is basically an adulterous relationship. It's an adulterous relationship. It's cheating on our spouse. It's giving our attention to what is not true. When we turn to our methods, our methods to make things true, when we turn to force things into existence, then we begin to rationalize. Then we begin to use a twisted sort of a logic to make our own truths certain. And we generate our own faith by that rationalization. But it isn't real faith. It's not that trust in a friendly universe or a benevolent God. It's not a real faith. It's a faith that comes out of the illusion of control. And control can become a real trippy thing. Because as soon as you try to hold on to control, as soon as you grasp it with your hand, the more you try to hold on to control, the less you have of it. Trying to hold on to control is like trying to grasp a handful of mud, of silt. And the harder you grip it, the harder you try to hold it, the more it just makes its way in between your fingers and falls away from you. And so we find that people lose their sanity. They lose their minds. They lose their very souls in trying to maintain control. And we seek security and we seek safety in maintaining control through what we know. And in that knowing, we often become arrogant. And it's a funny thing that arrogance will often wear a cloak of faith, of faith. Lao Tzu said that a good traveler has no fixed plans. A good traveler is not one who is certain, who's concrete in their expectations. And if we don't take those words of Lao Tzu to heart, we find ourselves saying things and making plans and setting methods in motions, methods in motion. And we make decisions about what we will do as if the world will simply arrange itself to suit us. And we don't even give it a second thought. We don't even give it a second thought. It just kind of drops out of our mouth. And we don't even realize we're saying it half the time. We say, and tomorrow I'm going to go do this. Next week I'm going to do that. And we make all these arrangements with life, with God, without even asking what He would have us to do so many times. We just make a decision that we're going to get up in the morning and do this or that. The Lord's brother, St. James, he wrote an epistle that was put in the Bible. And one of the things that St. James said was this. He said, he was talking to the church and he said, today or tomorrow we will go. You say, he addressed people who said this. He says, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to do this or that in this city and spend a year here and carry on business and we'll make money. And he goes on, he says, why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? It's a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it's the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. And as it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes, and all such boasting is evil. I don't know about others, but I can tell you that I catch myself in that arrogance. I catch myself saying that tomorrow I'm going to go do this or that. Where what I ought to consider is maybe I will, maybe I won't. It depends on what God wills, what life wills, not on what I will, not on what I will. Because the whole I will thing, I will go do this, I will go do that, and that caused problems since the very beginning, since the very start of time. Somebody said, I will rise above the throne of God and I'll set myself above God. To believe and to assume that you know what is not even actualized, that we know what tomorrow holds. Nah, what we're given is our daily bread. All we need to know is what we know now. All we need to know is what we know now. That's all we need to know. And when we start talking about what tomorrow holds, it's so easy to fall into the trap of ambition. We become ambitious. We make plans. And it's no wonder. It's no wonder. It's not that hard to believe that that goes on. It's no shock. It's nothing like that. It's just part of our conditioning. We're conditioned to think in that manner. We're conditioned to take on those methods. We're conditioned to be self-sufficient. We're conditioned since we were little kids to be self-sufficient. We're told well, all kinds of little maxims and idioms are given to us, and we hear things like life is what you make out of it. I've heard that. Life is what you life is what you make out of it. You got to go out and make something of yourself. You got to go out and become somebody. As if greatness and magnificence is something that you make yourself into being. And it's said with a spirit of pride and an air of arrogance. You got to go make something out of yourself. As if life is what we force it to be through our own efforts, you know? When actually what we are is what life allows us to be without any effort on its part. Without any effort on its part. We are what, in actuality, we are what life allows us to be without any effort on its part. See, life has no ego. Life has nothing to prove. It has no belief to defend. Life doesn't have to know anything. It has no need to know anything. Yeah, a beliefless belief. I like that, Brandon. A beliefless belief. And since life has no ego, it's not a control freak. God is not a control freak. The God that's a control freak is the God of the ego. It's not the real God. It's not the real life. We are they that need to know. We are they that seek to control. It's not God. We're the ones out there genetically modifying fruits and vegetables. We are the ones trying to tweak it all. We are the ones out of our self-sufficiency process our food and, and make our own rather than just eating what life gives us on the fly. It wasn't that way in the beginning. In the beginning, we just ate what was in front of us. I think Jesus even said that to his disciples. And when he sent them out, he said, "Take, just eat whatever is set before you. Just eat whatever is set before you." But we want to go beyond that. We want to make our own way. We want to be in control. So we build bigger barns. We build bigger bank accounts. We build. Uh, we go out and we turn stones into bread in the desert. In our impatience, in our ambition, in our belief that we know the way things ought to be. In the way that we think we know the way things ought to be. We plant a seed. We go out and plant seed. We sow crops. Yet we have no control of the very life that's in that seed because it's not ours. It's the life of the seed. Now we can produce an environment that's conducive to support life. We can do that, but we don't have absolute control over the life itself. We cannot produce or manufacture the life that's innate inside that seed. We are powerless to give life to that seed, just the way that seed is powerless to give life to us. The only thing we can give to the seed is the life we have, our very own life, our time, our attention. We can give to the seed. And giving it our time and attention, we can water it, we can cultivate it. But as far as the life inside of it, no, that's not up to us. When we care for it, it opens the door for it to come to life. It provides space for that life to manifest itself and show up. But it shows up on its own. It's not up to us. Yet there's this strange thing that happens that even though we each have a life of our own, we're interdependent. We eat the seed to live, and then we die, and then we turn back into soil, and then the seed grows in the soil and eats us to live. So there's always that turnover. There's always that cycle. In allowing ourselves to return to the dust, that precipitates the coming back to life. Yet how we fight that, we fight it. We don't want to give ourselves back to what's giving us life. We don't want to go back to dust. We don't want to become food for the very seed that fed us and kept us alive. We just want to take it all in. Uh, we want to keep our farm is what it amounts to. We want to keep our farm, our desired bodies. Good point, Cindy. Very apropos. We want to keep our farm. We want to keep our desired bodies. We don't want to grow old and get fat and bald and we don't want to lose our hair. And women don't want to begin to grow hair on parts of their body that they shave and have to shave. They don't want their farm to change. They don't want to go back to dust. And we fight that, don't we? We fight that. We resist that. We don't. We go we kick it. It's when we find when if we can die before we die, uh, then we don't have to fight to keep up those farms. You know. Because life doesn't come out of a stubborn will. Life doesn't come out of a dogmatic insistence uh, that things conform or take a certain form. Life doesn't manifest itself because of our insistence, because of our demands. And the funny thing, life is a lot like control. When you try to when you try to grasp control, you lose it. And when you fight with life, when you try forcing it to stay, when and take a certain form, the more you lose it. When we try to cling to life, it slips through our hands. When you try to cling to people, when we try to force them into to remaining with us in a certain form that meets our expectations, when we try to force them into conformity, they become uncomfortable in our presence. They don't like that. And we end up driving them away from us. The more we try to cling to people, the further away we drive them from us. Because nobody wants to be controlled. And what we need to see is that there's nothing to be gained. There's nothing to be gained by control. There's nothing to be gained by control. We're not going to get anybody any closer to us by force. Life life doesn't grow in a field of control. Life happens in a field of willingness. In a field of willingness. Things come to life in a field of willingness. Not a willingness to make things happen. That what that is, it's stubbornness in the cloak of willingness. It's actually the ego. Not a willingness to make things happen, not a stubbornness, but a field of willingness to let things happen, to let life happen. Seeds have a funny way of growing where we let them take root, where we just allow them to take root. They send down their own roots. They come back to the surface and sprout on their own. We just simply let that occur. They grow and they bear fruit with patience to let them simply mature and come to fruition in their time, not through force. What's it like when we pick food in fruit in haste? When we pick our crops in haste before their season, they end up tasting bitter. Have you ever eaten an unripe banana or a persimmon or some of that stuff? It's got a really bad taste to it when you eat it before its season. When you pick it before its season. Yet if you let the crop mature and ripen in its time, there's a a very sweet reward that comes out of that. The fruit isn't bitter. It's easy to digest. It's easy to eat. And we allow things to come into maturity by creating space. By giving things space to be and to become, not crowding them out, you know? But it's when we force our beliefs of what we think is right and wrong upon things, we crowd them out. We actually abort them like an unborn baby. We miscreate when we use force. We do violence when we force our beliefs. When we force things into being, they come into existence lifeless. They come into existence without the ability to reproduce themselves because they're born from a work or a labor or a force. And because they're born of that, that's the way they're maintained. And the things that we make all on our own, the things that we force into existence, become heavy pretty quickly. They become a drag pretty quickly because we have to maintain them by force. It takes effort to make something into something that it's really not. To keep something alive that's essentially dead. So there's a way of creating by simply giving things space to become, not by force, not by violence. The righteous inherit the earth by meekness. Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." It's by patiently waiting for everything to come about in its own time that all things make their way to us. And we can let things come about in their season. And we can let the seasons bring the fruits of life to us when we don't pick them before their time. When we start applying our methods, our beliefs, when we start foreseeing our ways, what we create is dead and lifeless. We form idols, lifeless forms that demand conformity and rob us of transformation. I like what a Christian theologian, a guy named Francis Schaeffer, once said. He was talking about methods, and that he said that they make for a more consistent but a much uglier world. In our quest to make things certain, um, in our quest to create a safe world, we force things into conformity, and we don't let seasons take place. We don't let change occur. We rely on our methods. And the thing with seasons, they're not a byproduct of methods. Seasons are not a byproduct of methods, but rather they are expressions of life itself. Watching the leaves turn colors in the fall, the smell of the air in that season, watching them fall away and arrive fresh the next spring. These are all things that make life vivacious. All the turning over, all the change, all the impermanence. It's the impermanence of life that gives it taste and beauty and wonder. It makes it awesome. What a drag it would be if those trees would just be like plastic and be very predictable and very certain and all that, but they just stayed the same all the time. No, it's the change. It's the impermanence that gives it taste, that gives it beauty, that gives it wonder, that reveals it, that makes life awesome. It's the impermanence. And too often our methods, what they do is they take away away the awareness of that impermanence. They take away the awareness of that impermanence. And we look on things and we say it's the same thing it always was. There's no difference. It's the same old thing day after day. The same job, the same wife, the same thing, the same boring damn old thing. Yet it isn't, because it's all really impermanent. But in our methods, we begin to see things as permanent that are really impermanent. Our methods actually can draw us into a state of illusion. They're kind of like driving the car on autopilot. They make life robotic and mechanical, and we can fall asleep within the method. We end up driving for miles, and then we wake up and don't even remember missing our exit. All done methodically, all on autopilot. Stuck in the rut, stuck in the method, stuck in the habit, stuck in the belief, stuck in the story, spinning our wheels. Because we know the way, because we know it. Yet the way of no way is the living way. It's the way of no way that's the way to live, fully present, awake here now, not knowing the way, not stuck in our methods, not stuck in our story. All the methods do is lull us into a deep state of unconsciousness. They just become mechanical habits rather than conscious responses. They're means to an end. If there's one thing for certain, it's that certainty certainly robs us of the vivaciousness of life. That's one thing for certain. And when we know, the life becomes, the world around us becomes much more certain and so much less dangerous, but so also so much less attractive. Because who's really got the fuller life? Who's got the brighter life? The guy working 9 to 5 in the same job day after day that's doing the same thing day after day that sees it that way, or say this rodeo cowboy who never knows how the day will end up or where his next meal's coming from. Who's more alive? Is it the skydiver falling from the sky or the dude in protective custody that cannot leave his home? Who's more alive? The person living dangerously or the person that's safe? When we put something in front of us, we put something in front of us so that we know what we're heading into. It just becomes a block in a wall that we build around us. When we set things before us so that we know what we're heading into, it just becomes essentially like a wall that we're building around us. And it keeps life beyond, keeps the real life beyond us. And when we lose touch with that life that's beyond us, we begin to fear it. And the funny thing is, when we try to defend ourselves against the life, we actually lose life. We lose it. When we fight the impermanence, when we fight the impermanence in order to make life certain, we have no future. Because future comes from impermanence. Future comes from the womb of impermanence. Without impermanence, you have no future. Without impermanence, you have no hope. How can you hope that things will ever change if they never change? But as long as there's time to change. And we need the time to change. We need the time to change so that we can grow. And as we grow, we see things differently. As we mature, we gain the vision, we gain the awareness that can only come through the maturity. And so we need time until we know that we don't need it. We need time in order to realize the timeless, in order to awaken to the timeless. And once we awaken, then the time loses its significance. It's not no longer what matters the most. One of the ways we can tell whether we woke up or not is whether we pressure ourselves and others to meet schedules that come out of those methods that I was talking about earlier. when we awaken, the deadlines cease to be what matters the most because our awareness is given to the eternal things, to the love that's here, to the faith that's here, to the hope that's here, to the timeless things. That's where our attention ends up being. We give our attention to those things, and they begin to appreciate and value. As we appreciate them, we give them our attention timelessly, all the time. They take us over. They enthrall us. They capture our hearts. The love captures our hearts. The faithfulness, the hope, these things capture our heart. And we just give our attention to them. Not to the things that come and go, but to the things that are always there, like the love. And we don't give our attention to the love that's here, to the peace that's here, to the silence that's here, to the eternal things that are here to get something, to go somewhere, to become somebody. We give our attention to them because we've been overcome by them, because we've been captured by their awesome qualities. And we don't give our attention to them as a means to an end, not for reward, but a simple loving presence. Just to know that the presence of love is here, just to know the presence of peace, just to know the stillness that's here, that is its own reward in and of itself. That becomes its own reward in and of itself. Because when we love what's here, then what's here becomes God's kingdom. When we love what's here, then what is here becomes God's kingdom. And that's what we awaken to. That's what we awaken to. And that's a great spot for me to stop and wrap it up with a tune. I'll do that. Give me a minute.
out of sight. No, 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 no. A great sunny day, nothing been living and I know there's just no better way to be in the race. Giving up everything I know had hindered my pace. And so long, you got me singing your song. There's a bright and joyful melody. Just put on my shoes, join in, be carefree. Don't you know that everything's gonna be alright? Oh, and haven't you heard the Father never let you out of his sight? No, 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 no. But he gives you room to grow, 'cause he wants to let you know that he really cares about you and me. So be free, go and run your race, don't be late. Go and fight the good fight of faith, and just like a child, carefree. Yeah, It's a bright, joyful melody. Just put on your shoes, join in, be carefree. Don't you know that everything's gonna be alright? Oh, haven't you heard the Father never let you out of his sight? No, 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 no. But he gives you room to grow, 'cause he wants to let you know that he really cares about you and me. So be free, go and run your race, don't be late. Go and fight the good fight of faith, and just like a child, carefree, carefree.
Hey, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your willing ears. And Lynn, are you here? Did you want to take it from here? I'll drop the mic.